My boy deserves to run the show now. Vincent said it like he was announcing the weather. I stood there in the conference room of Hollowgate Systems, watching him lean back in his chair with that satisfied smile he wore when he thought he had everything figured out. My name is Jordan Hayes, and at 52, I had spent the last 8 years turning his dying construction company into something worth talking about. The irony wasn't lost on me that we were having this conversation in the same room where I had presented the plans that saved his business. Marcus sat next to his father, nodding along like this made perfect sense. My son-in-law had been with the company for 3 years ever since he married my daughter Kelly. Good kid, worked hard, but he understood construction about as well as I understood quantum physics. Vincent kept talking about family legacy and how Marcus represented the future of Hollowgate Systems. The whole time I just listened and kept my mouth shut. "Jordan, you've done incredible work here," Vincent continued, gesturing around the room like he was showing off a museum. "But this company needs fresh blood, someone who can take it to the next level." I looked out the window at the construction site across the street. Workers were using the same old methods they had used 20 years ago. Slow, inefficient, expensive. The kind of approach that had nearly bankrupted Vincent before I showed up. Marcus followed my gaze and probably thought I was admiring the traditional craftsmanship. He had no idea I was calculating how much time and money they were wasting. "Makes sense," I said finally. "Marcus has been learning the business." Vincent's smile widened. He thought I was giving my blessing. Marcus straightened up in his chair, probably already imagining himself behind the big desk. Neither of them asked what I thought about the transition timeline or how we would handle ongoing projects. They just assumed everything would continue exactly as it had been, except with different names on the door. "We'll make sure you're taken care of, Jordan," Vincent added. "Generous severance package, good references. You've earned it." I nodded and shook both their hands. Professional. Cordial. No drama. As I walked back to my office, I passed the wall where we displayed our recent achievements. 50 million in annual revenue. Safety ratings that made competitors jealous. Project completion times that seemed impossible to other firms. Vincent and Marcus probably looked at those numbers and saw family success. What they didn't see was the foundation underneath it all. The foundation that belonged to me. 8 years ago, Vincent had called me desperately. Hollowgate Systems was hemorrhaging money, losing contracts, and facing bankruptcy. His traditional family construction business couldn't compete in a market that demanded efficiency and innovation. I had just sold my previous company and was looking for a new challenge. The deal we made seemed simple enough. I would stabilize the operation and modernize their approach, and Vincent would give me equity and operational control. What I brought to Hollowgate wasn't just experience. I had developed proprietary project management software that could optimize material delivery, coordinate subcontractors, and predict potential delays before they happened. The system integrated everything from weather data to traffic patterns, creating construction schedules that actually worked in the real world. I also had patents on several construction techniques that reduced both time and costs significantly. Vincent never really understood the technical side. He would nod politely when I explained the algorithms behind our scheduling system or the engineering principles that made our methods faster. His background was in old-school construction where relationships mattered more than efficiency. He valued handshakes and family connections over data and innovation. Marcus had inherited that same approach, which worked fine for small residential projects, but fell apart on the commercial contracts that kept us profitable. The warning signs had been subtle at first. Vincent started making comments about bringing Marcus into leadership discussions. Family dinners became strategy sessions, where I felt more like an employee than a partner. Kelly defended her husband when I expressed concerns about his readiness for major responsibilities. She reminded me that Marcus was family, and family deserved opportunities to grow. I had noticed discrepancies in how Vincent talked about the company's success. In client meetings, he emphasized Hollowgate's traditional values and family heritage. The innovative systems that actually delivered results got mentioned as minor improvements rather than fundamental advantages. When industry publications wrote articles about our turnaround, Vincent made sure the photos showed him and Marcus together. with me positioned as a senior advisor rather than the architect of our transformation. The financial reports told a different story. Revenue had grown from $12 million to $50 million during my tenure. Our profit margins exceeded industry standards by significant percentages. Customer satisfaction scores consistently ranked us among the top construction firms in Phoenix. But Vincent increasingly framed these achievements as natural evolution rather than revolutionary change. Marcus had been asking more questions about our proprietary systems lately. He wanted access to the project management software and detailed explanations of our construction methodologies. I had been sharing general principles while keeping the specific technical details private. Vincent encouraged this knowledge transfer, assuming everything would remain within the family business regardless of personnel changes. He never asked about intellectual property ownership or licensing agreements. That oversight would prove costly. The morning after Vincent's announcement, I sat in my truck outside the office for an hour before going inside. The parking lot was filling up with workers heading to various job sites, using the efficient routing system I had designed. They loaded materials according to delivery schedules my software had optimized. Everything ran like clockwork because I had built the clock. Inside, Marcus was already at my desk, scrolling through project files on my computer. He looked up when I walked in, not even slightly embarrassed about going through my materials without permission. "Dad thought I should start familiarizing myself with the current projects," he said, clicking through spreadsheets like he was browsing social media. "This software is pretty sophisticated. Who developed it?" I moved around him to get my coffee mug, taking time to think about my answer. Marcus was looking at the interface of a system that had taken me 3 years to perfect. The algorithms behind those simple screens represented thousands of hours of development work, testing, and refinement. But to him, it probably looked like any other business application. "Custom development," I said. "Took a while to get it right." He nodded absently, already focused on something else. "Vincent wants me to understand how we maintain our competitive advantage. He says the key is building strong relationships with subcontractors and suppliers." That's when it hit me. Vincent genuinely believed the company's success came from traditional business practices. He thought our innovation was just window dressing on fundamental construction principles that any experienced operator could replicate. Marcus was learning the wrong lessons because his father was teaching him the wrong curriculum. I walked over to the window and watched our crews preparing for the day. Every aspect of their work followed protocols I had developed. The safety procedures that kept our insurance costs low, the quality control measures that eliminated rework, the coordination systems that prevented costly delays. Vincent saw efficient workers and attributed their performance to good leadership. He missed the invisible infrastructure that made their efficiency possible. The realization settled over me slowly. Like dust on a construction site, Vincent wasn't just replacing me with Marcus. He was gambling the company's future on the assumption that our competitive advantages would automatically transfer to new management. He believed our success was rooted in Hollowgate's family culture, rather than the technical innovations that actually delivered results. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for my patent attorney. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, but I had a feeling that was about to change. As I walked back to my desk, Marcus was still clicking through project files, completely unaware that he was looking at the interface rather than the engine. Vincent's confidence in family leadership was about to meet the reality of intellectual property law. The call could wait until I got home. Some conversations were better held in private. 3 weeks later, I requested a formal meeting with Vincent to discuss the transition details. I brought documentation outlining my contributions to the company's growth and proposed a timeline for transferring responsibilities to Marcus. Vincent seemed pleased that I was being cooperative about the change. He had no idea I was gathering information for my attorney. "The important thing is maintaining continuity," Vincent said, reviewing my transition proposal. "Our clients trust Hollowgate systems because we deliver consistent results. Marcus understands that." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. He had been shadowing me on client visits and sitting in on planning meetings. His confidence was growing daily, which would have been encouraging if he had demonstrated any understanding of why our methods worked. Instead, he repeated talking points about family values and traditional craftsmanship that sounded good, but missed the technical foundation entirely. I want to make sure we protect the company's proprietary systems, I said carefully. The project management software and construction methodologies that give us our competitive edge. Vincent waved dismissively. That's all internal stuff, Jordan. The real value is in our reputation and relationships. Marcus has been building those connections since he joined the company. I pulled out a folder containing patent documentation and licensing agreements. Vincent's expression shifted from confidence to confusion as I spread the papers across the conference table. Marcus leaned forward, trying to read legal language that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. What is all this? Vincent asked. Intellectual property documentation, I explained. The project management software is licensed to Hologate Systems under my personal patents. The construction techniques we use are protected innovations that I developed before joining the company. The licensing agreements specify terms for continued use. Vincent's face darkened as he began to understand the implications. Marcus looked between us, still trying to process what was happening. He picked up one of the patent documents and stared at it like it might explain itself. You're saying you own our systems? Vincent's voice carried an edge I had never heard before. I'm saying I own the intellectual property that drives our efficiency and profitability, I corrected. Hologate has been operating under licensing agreements that I established when we restructured the company 8 years ago. The room fell silent except for the sound of Vincent flipping through pages of legal documentation. Marcus set down the patent paperwork and looked at his father for guidance. Neither of them had ever bothered to review the legal structure of our partnership arrangements. They had assumed everything belonged to the company simply because it was being used by the company. This is ridiculous, Vincent finally said. You can't hold the company hostage over technical details. We'll figure out other ways to manage projects. I'm not holding anyone hostage, I replied calmly. I'm clarifying the terms of intellectual property usage. The licensing agreements include specific provisions for scenarios like this. Marcus found his voice. What kind of provisions? I gathered the documents back into the folder. The licenses terminate if I'm no longer actively involved in company operations. That includes scenarios where my role is significantly diminished or my responsibilities are transferred to other personnel. Vincent's confidence crumbled as he grasped the situation. He had spent weeks planning my transition out of operational control, never considering that the systems driving our success might leave with me. Marcus stared at the conference table, probably realizing that his promotion came with complications nobody had anticipated. We can renegotiate, Vincent said quickly. Adjust the licensing terms to accommodate the leadership transition. The current agreements took 2 years to structure properly, I told him. Renegotiation would require extensive legal review and revised implementation protocols. That process typically takes 12 to 18 months. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Vincent was calculating the implications while Marcus struggled to understand how technical details could derail his career advancement. Neither of them had anticipated that their family business operated on foundations they didn't own. That evening, I reviewed the complete intellectual property portfolio in my home office. The documentation filled 3 binders and represented the technological backbone of everything Hologate Systems had achieved. Vincent and Marcus weren't just losing a senior manager. They were losing the operational infrastructure that had transformed their company from bankruptcy to prosperity. The project management software alone handled dozens of complex functions. Material procurement optimization that reduced costs by 15%. Subcontractor coordination that eliminated scheduling conflicts. Weather integration that prevented weather-related delays. Quality control protocols that maintained safety ratings above industry standards. Resource allocation algorithms that maximized crew efficiency across multiple job sites simultaneously. Marcus had been asking technical questions without understanding the scope of what he didn't know. He assumed the software was simply a digital version of traditional planning methods. The reality was far more complex. The system integrated real-time data from multiple sources to generate dynamic schedules that adapted automatically to changing conditions. Replicating that functionality would require extensive development work and deep understanding of construction mathematics. My construction techniques represented another category of protected innovation, structural engineering approaches that reduced material waste while maintaining strength requirements, foundation methods that accelerated installation timelines without compromising stability, installation procedures that minimized labor costs through improved efficiency. These weren't minor improvements over standard practices. They were fundamental advances that delivered measurable competitive advantages. The patents covered specific technical implementations rather than general concepts. Competitors couldn't simply copy our approaches without violating intellectual property protections. Vincent's assumption that other firms use similar methods was completely wrong. Our techniques were proprietary innovations that created the efficiency gaps our competitors couldn't explain. I had also discovered additional complications during my legal review. Several of our major contracts included performance guarantees that depended on our proprietary systems. The Phoenix Convention Center expansion required completion timelines that were only achievable using our optimized scheduling methods. The Sundale Financial Headquarters project included cost controls that relied on our material procurement algorithms. Without access to these systems, Hollowgate would struggle to meet contractual obligations. The financial implications extended beyond operational efficiency. Our insurance rates reflected safety records that depended on proprietary protocols. Our bonding capacity was based on performance history that assumed continued access to proven methodologies. Our credit lines were secured by company valuations that included intellectual property assets. Vincent's transition plan would trigger cascading effects throughout the business structure. Marcus called me around 9 p.m. sounding frustrated and confused. "Jordan, I've been looking at the software documentation and nothing makes sense. How am I supposed to learn systems that aren't even explained anywhere?" "The technical documentation is protected intellectual property," I explained. "Training materials exist, but they require authorization for access." "Authorization from who?" "The patent holder." He was quiet for a long moment. "This is insane. You're making it impossible for me to do the job." "I'm protecting intellectual property that I developed over many years," I corrected. "The complexity isn't artificial obstruction. These systems genuinely require extensive technical knowledge to operate effectively." After hanging up, I sat in my office thinking about the conversation. Marcus wasn't intentionally dismissive of technical innovation. He simply had no framework for understanding how deeply technology had transformed modern construction. Vincent had raised him to value relationships and traditional craftsmanship, which were important qualities but insufficient for managing sophisticated operations. The next morning would bring difficult conversations about the future of Hollowgate systems. Vincent would probably try to negotiate compromise solutions that preserved family control while maintaining operational capabilities. But intellectual property law didn't accommodate family politics. The patents and licensing agreements created clear boundaries that couldn't be wished away through good intentions. I spent the weekend implementing what I privately called the extraction protocol. Every proprietary system included administrative functions that could disable access or transfer control to external servers. The project management software connected to cloud-based servers that I controlled independently. The technical documentation was stored on encrypted drives that required my personal authorization codes. The training materials existed only in formats that could be remotely deactivated. Monday morning, I arrived at the office early and began the systematic process of securing intellectual property assets. The software modifications took 3 hours to complete. From the user perspective, everything appeared normal. Behind the scenes, critical functions were being redirected to servers that would shut down when my employment terminated. Marcus would be able to access basic features, but not the advanced algorithms that delivered competitive advantages. Vincent called a company meeting for Tuesday afternoon to announce the leadership transition officially. He had invited our major clients and key subcontractors to hear about Hollowgate's exciting future under Marcus's direction. The timing was perfect for my purposes. Public announcements would create pressure to proceed with the transition quickly, preventing lengthy renegotiation of intellectual property terms. During the meeting, Vincent spoke enthusiastically about family legacy and traditional values. Marcus presented his vision for expanding Hollowgate's market presence through stronger customer relationships. Several clients asked technical questions about maintaining project efficiency and delivery timelines. Marcus deflected these questions by emphasizing commitment to excellence rather than specific methodologies. After the meeting, I submitted my formal resignation letter to Vincent. The document included detailed explanations of intellectual property licensing terminations and recommended timelines for system transitions. I also provided contact information for my patent attorney and suggested that Hollowgate engage independent legal counsel to review the implications. Vincent's reaction was predictably explosive. "You can't sabotage the company just because you're unhappy about Marcus taking over." "I'm not sabotaging anything," I replied calmly. "I'm exercising legal rights that were established when we structured our partnership 8 years ago. The licensing agreements include specific termination provisions that activate when my role changes significantly." Marcus tried a different approach. "What would it take to keep the licenses active? We could adjust your position to maintain operational involvement." "The licensing agreements specify active management responsibilities," I explained. "Advisory roles or reduced involvement don't meet the criteria for continued licensing." Over the following week, Vincent hired a law firm to review the intellectual property documentation. Their analysis confirmed what I had been explaining. The patents were valid, the licensing agreements were enforceable, and the termination provisions were legally binding. Hollowgate's options were limited to renegotiation or replacement of the proprietary systems. The replacement option presented significant challenges. Developing equivalent software would require 18 to 24 months and substantial investment. The construction techniques were protected by patents that prevented direct replication. Finding alternative methods that delivered comparable efficiency would require extensive research and testing. During that development period, Hollowgate would operate with significant competitive disadvantages. Vincent attempted to negotiate licensing extensions that would allow gradual transition to alternative systems. My attorney explained that such arrangements would require new agreements with different terms and conditions. The original licenses couldn't be modified retroactively to accommodate changing business relationships. Marcus grew increasingly frustrated as he realized the scope of his predicament. The software interface that had seemed straightforward revealed layers of complexity when critical functions became unavailable. Project schedules that had previously updated automatically required manual calculations that he couldn't perform. Material procurement optimization reverted to traditional methods that increased costs and delivery times. On Friday afternoon, I cleaned out my office while Marcus watched from the doorway. He looked like someone who had just discovered that his new car didn't include an engine. Vincent sat in the conference room, surrounded by legal documents and technical specifications that represented 8 years of innovation he had never bothered to understand. My resignation became effective the following Monday. The licensing termination would activate 72 hours later. By Thursday morning, the full impact of the intellectual property withdrawal became undeniable. The project management software displayed error messages instead of optimized schedules. Marcus called our largest subcontractor to explain why material deliveries would be delayed. The Phoenix Convention Center project manager demanded explanations for sudden timeline changes that violated contractual commitments. I was in my home office when Vincent called, his voice barely controlled. "Jordan, you have to help us. The Morrison project is falling apart and Marcus can't figure out the scheduling system." "The scheduling system is no longer available to Hollowgate," I replied. "The licensing terminated as specified in our agreements. This is going to destroy the company." "The company still has capable people and good relationships. Those were always Vincent's priorities." Marcus took the phone. "Jordan, I don't understand any of this technical stuff. Can't you just show me how to make it work?" "The systems require extensive training and technical background," I explained. "Even with full documentation, implementation takes months of specialized education." Vincent came back on the line. "What do you want? Money? A partnership deal? Just tell us what it takes to fix this." "I'm starting my own firm," I said. "Jordan Hayes Construction Solutions. We'll be using advanced project management techniques and proprietary construction methods to deliver superior results for our clients." The silence lasted long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Vincent spoke again. "You planned this whole thing. I protected intellectual property that I developed over many years. Hollowgate chose to terminate my operational involvement without considering the legal implications. After hanging up, I reviewed the client list I had been developing. 3 major contractors had already expressed interest in Jordan Hayes Construction Solutions. They had worked with Hollowgate's efficient systems and wanted access to similar capabilities for their own projects. The Phoenix market had plenty of room for a firm that could deliver results rather than promises. 6 months later, Jordan Hayes Construction Solutions had secured contracts worth $32 million. Our proprietary systems delivered the efficiency and reliability that clients expected from modern construction operations. Meanwhile, Hollowgate systems struggled with cost overruns and deadline failures that damaged their reputation throughout Phoenix. Vincent had attempted to hire software developers to replicate my project management system. After spending 4 months and significant money, they produced basic scheduling software that lacked the sophisticated algorithms that made the original system effective. Marcus learned traditional construction management techniques that worked adequately for simple projects, but failed completely on complex commercial contracts. The Morrison project became a case study in operational failure. Without optimized scheduling, material deliveries arrived late or in wrong quantities. Subcontractor coordination broke down, creating conflicts that delayed progress and increased costs. The final completion was 3 months behind schedule, triggering penalty clauses that cost Hollowgate nearly $2 million. Several longtime clients shifted their business to firms that could guarantee reliable performance. The Sundale Financial Headquarters project was reassigned to a competitor after Hollowgate admitted they couldn't meet the original timeline commitments. Marcus discovered that relationship building was insufficient when those relationships were damaged by operational failures. Vincent eventually sold Hollowgate systems to a larger construction firm that had their own management systems and experienced leadership. The sale price reflected a struggling company rather than the $50 million operation it had been under my management. Marcus found employment with the acquiring firm in a junior project management role. The intellectual property that Vincent had dismissed as technical details proved to be the foundation of everything Hollowgate had achieved. Family legacy and traditional values were meaningful concepts, but they couldn't substitute for the innovation and efficiency that modern construction demanded. Some bridges you don't burn, you just stop maintaining them, and time does the rest.